Ever have one of those moments where like something totally normal suddenly becomes kind of unsettling? Like I did when I was reading this new study from Risk Analysis. It's about what happens when you flush a toilet.
Mm-hmm.
We're going deep on this one along with the related article. We're diving into the hidden world of bioaerosols. They're lurking in restrooms everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when you think about it.
Right.
You think restrooms, you think hygiene, but then there's this whole invisible thing going on. This whole ecosystem of like microscopic stuff that we don't even realize.
Yeah. And so get this, flushing a toilet. It's like setting up a microbial mist.
Oh, wow.
Almost like a sneeze, but from the toilet bowl. This study really zoomed in. If it found some really unwelcome guests in these bioaerosol clouds, bacteria like E. coli and S. aureus, I don't know about you, but I don't want to be breathing that in.
Definitely not. I mean, those are some of the worst.
Right, yeah. So the study looked at all different types of toilets. They wanted to see if, like, the design of the toilet played a role in how much of this bacteria was getting sprayed up, and the results were surprising.
What'd they find?
Squat toilets.
Mm-hmm.
They release way more bacteria than bidet-style toilets. Like, way more. Almost twice as much in some cases.
Wow.
I've used squat toilets when I've traveled.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just say it's an experience.
Yeah.
Why such a big difference, though? Is it like the shape of the bowl? Or how it flushes, or what?
Well, it's probably a lot of things altogether. Like squat toilets, they flush at a different angle. There's more force. And so that probably creates more turbulence in the water.
Oh, so more aerosolization.
Exactly. But bidet toilets, those are way gentler.
Makes sense.
So it's more contained.
Okay, so design really does matter. What about the contents of the bowl? Does that affect how much bacteria gets launched?
Well, that was another big finding from the study.
Yeah.
Flushing with waste present, it makes a huge difference, like way more bacteria compared to flushing an empty toilet.
It's like a chain reaction.
Yeah, it makes sense though, right? The more stuff in there, the more stuff gets aerosolized, more bacteria can take flight.
It really makes you think twice about just hitting that flush button.
Absolutely.
You have to think about everything going on in the restroom, not just what you can see.
Mm-hmm.
So the study found something else interesting. It turns out there's a secret weapon in the fight against germ clouds.
Really?
Ventilation.
What about it?
Those exhaust fans.
Uh-huh.
They make a huge difference. The study found that good ventilation with an exhaust fan can reduce your risk of exposure to bioaerosols by 10 times.
10 times, wow.
It's like an invisible shield.
Yeah, it sucks all those bad particles out of the air before you can breathe them in.
So before we get too grossed out here, let's talk about what all this means for us. Like when we're using public restrooms, what can we do? Should we like hold our breath every time we flush?
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say this research really helps us understand the risks. We can navigate public restrooms a little more safely.
So like choose our restrooms more carefully. Look for the ones with the exhaust fans.
Exactly. Good ventilation makes a big difference. Maybe now you'll think of those noisy exhaust fans a little differently.
So ventilation is key. What else? What about this bidet versus squat toilet thing? Should we all be switching to bidets?
Well, bidet toilets definitely seem to be better at minimizing these bioaerosols, but they aren't a perfect solution.
Yeah, they aren't really a thing in some parts of the world.
Right, and they can be harder to access for some people, so it's complicated. But this research does give us something to think about, especially policymakers and public health officials. It can help them design and maintain safer restrooms.
And maybe it'll inspire some people to switch to bidets if they can.
Maybe. But even without bidets, we can still do a lot to reduce these risks, as individuals and as a society.
Okay, so that's a great transition to our next segment where we'll dive deeper into those steps and explore the public health implications of all of this. Stay tuned. It's about to get even more interesting. Okay, so we know these germ clouds are real and ventilation can help. But what about on a larger scale? Like think about public restrooms in restaurants or airports, places with tons of people using the restrooms constantly.
Yeah, that's a really important point. This research could change how we think about public health policy and building design.
Right.
Like, what if better ventilation systems in restrooms were actually required by building codes?
It makes you wonder why we don't already have that.
Yeah.
We have rules for food safety and water quality.
Right.
Why not air quality, too? Especially in restrooms.
Exactly. And now this study gives us the scientific evidence to support it.
Yeah, it's like we've been so focused on cleaning surfaces, but we forgot about the air.
Right. Like there's this whole other level of contamination we haven't been thinking about.
So it's not just about what we do as individuals.
Uh-huh.
It's about advocating for change on a bigger scale.
Absolutely.
We could reach out to lawmakers,
Yeah,
raise awareness on social media,
that's a good one.
even push for better ventilation in our own workplaces.
Right. Just talking about it with people can make a difference. The more people know about this issue, the more likely we are to actually see some changes.
So how did they measure these bioaerosols in the study? Did they just hold up a microscope to the air?
No, it's way more complicated than that.
Right.
They used these special air samplers,
Uh-huh.
and then they did DNA analysis
Wow.
to identify the bacteria in the air. They weren't just counting particles. They wanted to know what kinds of bacteria were in there.
So this was a serious study.
Oh, yeah, it was a really rigorous scientific study. They had solid data.
It's pretty mind-blowing. This deep dive has really opened my eyes to this whole invisible world around us.
It's amazing what science can teach us.
It shows us there's so much more to even the most ordinary things than we realize.
As-
I'm also thinking about the ethics of all this.
Oh, yeah.
Is it enough to just make people aware of the problem? Or do we need to push for more, like mandatory ventilation standards?
That's a tough question.
Yeah,
It's always a balancing act,
right.
trying to protect public health without taking away too much freedom.
Exactly. We don't want to scare people or make things too complicated,
Right.
but we also have to protect people who are more vulnerable.
Yeah, those who are more likely to get sick.
It's a hard problem
It really is. It's going to take a lot of open discussion.
between scientists and policymakers and the public.
Yeah, everyone needs to work together.
It seems like the more we learn about all this, the more questions we have. It feels like we could talk about this forever. There's just so much to uncover.
Seriously, there's a whole world of tiny stuff out there that we don't even know about.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive into germ clouds with one last thought for our listeners.
Next time you're in a public restroom, take a second to think about all the stuff happening that you can't even see.
Yeah, listen for that exhaust fan.
Maybe it'll make you feel a little better.
Or maybe you'll even start thinking about bidet toilets a little differently.
They could be part of the solution, right?
Maybe. But no matter what, we hope this deep dive has made you a little more curious.
And a little more knowledgeable.
Understanding the science behind everyday things can help us make better choices.
For ourselves and for our communities.
So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the world around us.
Stay curious out there.